isn't entirely new to Metroid. It's something we've seen a few times now, with instances where the Galactic Federation troopers were slaughtered in Echoes, Corruption's GFS Valhalla, and pretty much the entirety of Metroid Fusion. We all remember how we felt when we first saw the SAX. But with the exception of Fusion, Nintendo hasn't fully explored horror in Metroid. I feel like that this is something that Nintendo should really start getting more into, for various reasons, of which I'll get into soon. But first, let's go over what Nintendo has done to scratch the surface of horror in Metroid. Let's start with the Metroid manga to get it out of the way, since it's, not a Metroid game. This is one of the most interesting and important pieces of Metroid in media. It details all of Samus's backstory and expands the lore of Metroid tremendously. It's a real shame that I never got an official translation. Anyway, there is a surprising amount of horrific imagery in some of the manga, the most obvious being the deaths of Samus's parents. The way that they are shown to die is pretty messed up, to be honest. The father of Samus blows himself up along with the space pirate ship to stop their invasion of K2L, and Samus's mother stops Ridley from killing Samus by sacrificing herself in front of Samus, who is 3 years old at this point. This in and of itself is pretty messed up. But there's one more disturbing part: Ridley. Ridley alone is really horrifying in this manga, especially where he tortures Samus to the point that she has a mental breakdown. Samus screams and begs to die because Ridley is causing her that much distress. He even kills Grey Voice, a Chozo who raised Samus alongside Old Bird, right in front of her. Just in case people wonder why this scene works and Other M's doesn't, is because this is Samus's first time meeting Ridley since the events of K2L, not like the 100th time in Other M, which will get a video on its own eventually. Metroid Prime 2 Echoes is easily one of the darkest games in the franchise, with dead bodies everywhere, the scans of the bodies, and most definitely the scene where the Federation troops get absolutely eviscerated. To go over the scans for a moment, the Federation scans are really tragic as you slowly see the sanity of the troops dwindle and even read their final seconds of life. This translates to the Luminoth bodies as well. One of them struck out to me, as the scan implied that some of the Luminoth warriors were children. That really struck me as I didn't expect that at all, but easily the part that I found the most horrific is the scene where the troopers are slaughtered. You go through their base, seeing the results of what happened to them, and then you actually see what happened. Seeing the troopers get absolutely decimated is something I wasn't expecting, but it's definitely something I'm glad was in the game. Just hearing the screams and the begging of the troopers is just heartbreaking as well. They're powerless to do anything. This scene also sets up Samus tremendously well, as it reinforces why Samus is the best in the galaxy. No normal person could do what she does. It's to the point that Samus herself feels sorry for the troopers, of which you could tell from her body language. I'll go over these next ones quickly so we can get to the next section. But Corruption, Super Metroid, and Fusion have all delved into horror in some way. In Corruption, you had to go through Elysia, and on the planet there was a facility where you find the Metroids, and the introduction to it is a jump scare. There are bodies everywhere, and the music is downright hell. The scans of the bodies don't help. Of course, the Valhalla takes the cake as there are bodies strewn in various different ways. The scans also don't do any favours, as some of them describe exactly how certain troopers and pirates died, such as a blade right in the chest, or a PED suit malfunctioning. And since it's in space, you can't help but wonder if some of them suffocated thanks to the vacuum. In the beginning of Metroid Prime, there are mutilated bodies everywhere and the scans detailing how they died, which is great honestly. Super Metroid had Crocomire's death, which is still pretty horrifying to this day, and the wrecked ship. In Fusion, well, yeah, I don't really need to explain this one. Now, why does Metroid need more horror? It's been successful without an excessive amount of it so far, so what's the point? Well, point is, it hasn't been very successful. Metroid is in a bit of a grey area when it comes to its audience. The ratings in the target audience are mostly teens, but the reality is that the majority of the audience are adults. So I feel that Nintendo should capitalize on the fact that they're marketing the Switch for adults, and with that, they should make a game for them. Metroid is probably one of the few games that could do this. This could potentially boost the sales of the series as well. This means that Metroid should go into the 16 to 18 range. For America, this would be rated M. The reasons for that are what I just described. A more focused audience that are adults. But of course that's not all. Having the series go for a more mature audience allows it to have more creative freedom in terms of level design, stories, combat, and more. Not only that, but there seems to be a common trend where Metroid is really compelling and engaging when something horrific is presented, and these moments tend to be the highlights of the series for many people. It's almost impossible to mention horror without mentioning gore as well. Gore really should be implemented more into Metroid. Super Metroid showed the death of Crocomire, and to some, it was the highlight of the game. It just so happens that the games that have a fair bit of horror to them also have a bit of gore. The opening to Metroid Prime is a perfect example of this. I want more of that, more detail and more gruesome. In Echoes, anything relating to the Federation troopers is horrifying, but not quite as gory. You don't see decapitated corpses, arms and legs pulled apart, or even faces devoured. I feel like that level of horror and gore would amplify scenes like that. Making the series like this would also make the player feel dread for most of the game. and then feel immensely empowered as they overcome these horrors. And it also strengthens Samus as a character, overcoming truly the worst and the most horrific in the galaxy. So now we've listed why horror and even gore should be included in Metroid more. Let's talk about how these elements could be implemented in the games and other media. The easy way to do this is to do it how the previous games have done it, just more detailed, gruesome, and on a larger scale. Enemies could take on a more monstrous and horrifying look as well, but they should stay believable. For example, fleshy abominations that spray blood on your visor, temporarily blinding you. There could be more graphic stories, much like the story of the Morph Ball tests that the Space Pirates did, and the last moments of the troopers on Aether. As mentioned before, more violence and gore could be added, more graphic deaths, and even executions if they return. This is particularly important as enemies that just explode into a fire on death is just comical at this point. The music of the series could also take more somber and terrifying tones where it needs to, though I feel that this is already accomplished with echoes, fusions, and even Samus Returns to soundtracks. The level design could also have more freedom. Fleshy corridors and lakes of blood could be a thing. Spin-off games could also delve into a more horror-focused style, where you take the perspective of someone that isn't Samus and has to go through the horrors that she faces, and potentially not even make it out alive. Will any of this happen though? I think it's quite likely given the reasons that I've listed. Nintendo was lacking a franchise that is dedicated for adults, and that's a little bit of a problem for a console that is marketed more towards adults than ever before with a Nintendo platform. The sales of the franchise could definitely be boosted. This is because it has something else to offer that no other Nintendo franchise has. Horror and gore, at least in any large amount. Some may be thinking that Metroid has been successful without much horror or gore up to this point, but that's simply not true. Most Metroid games only sell around 1 million copies, with the exceptions of the original Metroid and Metroid Prime. To the majority of people, Metroid is the series that has a lot of walking back and forth in it. And to be honest, they're kind of right. So why not spice that walking back and forth with some horror, gore, and potentially more action? And with that, we come to the end of this video. Can I just say, thank you guys for all your support on my videos so far. It really means a lot to me. This month has been really crazy for me so far, but it wouldn't be without you guys. You guys have made this an experience for me and I can't thank you enough. I'll keep going, of course. But what's next? Well, the Metroid community is a bit mixed on something. The Metroid timeline. So that's what I'm going to be tackling next time. If you want to see that video, go ahead and hit those like and subscribe buttons. That helps me out in more ways than I could put into words. So with that, I've been that Metroid guy, and I will see you in the next mission. Bye bye.